brings us to the next question: is how would you describe your trust in Valve?
Yeah. I don't know. Like I don't really have much. I haven't in the past have a lot of contact with Valve. Um, I have in some respects. I've had them, kind of ask me to rework several things that, for various reasons weren't acceptable to them. So I've reworked them and then just heard no feedback at all. Um, and I think, I have to give probably some, um, allowances to Valve that I think probably the workshop grew a lot faster than they were kind of anticipating it to grow. Um, but yeah, like I think it's not the fact that I don't trust Valve, it's just that they're pretty non-communicative. They don't really talk a lot. Um, so, you don't, it's hard to kind of trust a wall. There's not really much on the other side there that's getting back to you. So, and that's what I mean. I kind of just, I did my own thing and just kind of plodded along and, that's pretty much how it went for me. I didn't really have the need to contact Valve that often.
Okay. So sort of moving on more to the community or the Dota 2 community.
Yep.
Do you believe that the Dota 2 community's role is important in your creation process?
Yeah, totally. I think it is. I I rely a decent amount on the community. I like to I I actively watch Dota 2. I don't play as much as I used to anymore. Um, but I watch the international. I watch the tournaments. I take note of what heroes the community is interested in to think about what heroes would be good to make sets for. I read Reddit, the Dota 2 subreddit, so I watch the community. I often, if there's another set that's gotten feedback on Reddit, then I kind of take note of that and kind of work it into my own, um, you know, the way that I do things. But yeah, I think it's the community is valuable to a degree. Sometimes, once it gets to a certain point about, artistic kind of questions, then you have to turn to the more specific workshop community rather than just the wider Dota 2 community.
Okay. So sort of when you're talking about um, the community and popular heroes, how does that interplay with the meta?
Yeah, so I guess it's kind of the same thing. So like if the meta is, you know, these 5 or 10 heroes, then you have to consider, you know, those 5 or 10 heroes are going to be very popular on the workshop. I tend to go the opposite way. I like to make sets for heroes who haven't gotten a lot of love because I feel like you get a lot more kind of respect from the community if you kind of do something that they weren't expecting. Um, or I kind of just do hero sets for heroes that I like in general. But yeah, I kind of see what the community's interested in. It kind of, in some ways, it's hard because I know the community gives a lot of feedback about what they would like, but as a workshop artist, you're not able to provide that because there's just not the several of the things that they want. There's nothing in place that allows you to provide things for those heroes. So we kind of just can't really help them, unfortunately.
So by things in place, do you mean technical issues or technical problems with
Yes.
modeling?
Yeah, so there's a list of heroes that are broken down to enable you to add to make sets for those heroes. Several of them have not been added to that list ever since they were released into the game. So there's heroes that are quite old. Um, Whether or not internally within Valve, there's things going on to allow them. We haven't really heard. It was probably about 2 or 3 years ago. There were 2 emails that circulated that were about how Valve would like the workshop artists to enable those heroes to be edited in the workshop. So they emailed a whole bunch of people. I was part of those emails. How they would like to, what would the workshop artists like to do. But as far as I know, those are the only 2 emails that ever happened in the past 3 or 4 years. So I thought that was kind of the start of a new thing, but unfortunately, that was pretty much it.
Okay. Um, so do you value the sort of community relationships that you have, or how do you value them
Uh,
in terms
yeah,
of the
I
greater
think,
Dota 2 community? Sorry.
yeah, I think, like, I do value the relationships. I'm probably, like, I don't, like I said, I'm not like a well-known name, so I think, I don't kind of, and that's kind of nice. It means that, I don't feel the pressure of like everything you make, people have expectations that it has to be better than, your last famous set. I can kind of just do whatever I want. I think for some of the workshop artists who, are quite well known, there may be this kind of, expectation that everything they do is gold. Doesn't always work out that way, unfortunately. So, I do value it, but I don't really have this kind of image that I'm trying to cultivate or anything like that. So I don't really take it too seriously.
Okay. And do you believe that the way that the great Dota 2 community communicates, or the way that information is shared, is it effective?
Um, yeah, I guess so. Like, I think it's kind of hard to separate effective feedback from just general spam. Um, and I think that kind of comes down to the way that the actual workshop itself functions within Steam. There's not a really, like, I think, I would much rather like some sort of better medium to get feedback from people. But that just kind of, that's a technical issue as well. Doesn't really, nothing's really happened there for the past few years. So, I do take into account some of the feedback that I get. Um, Sometimes I put it in Google Translate and find out that it's pretty mean, but, it doesn't really bother me that much. So, yeah.
Okay. Well, that sort of like leads on to the next question: is do you believe that the community negatively affects your work, and how?
Um, Sometimes, yeah, I will admit sometimes it kind of negatively affects you. So it's, you can work, you know, for me, because I have another job, so whenever I can, so I can work, for a month or so on and off on something, be quite proud of it and put it up there, and then just get absolutely slaughtered in the votes and the comments and stuff. And yeah, it kind of sucks. You beat yourself up a little bit, but you can't get too down on yourself. Um, I think there's a lot of cases where the community doesn't like things for various reasons, whether or not it's good quality. It could just be that they don't want any more sets for that hero, or maybe you put up a set unbeknownst to you, another workshop artist worked on a set with a similar theme and already put it on the workshop 2 days before you, and the stars align, and yours is the one that they take their anger out on. So I think in terms of like, has negative feedback ever made me alter the way I do things? Not really. I much prefer positive feedback or constructive feedback, I guess. But yeah, I'll admit, when you spend a lot of time on something and you're quite proud of it, but the community kind of rips you to shreds for it, you kind of get a bit down for a couple of hours or so.
Okay. And when specifically talking about the community of content contributors or other workshop artists, do you
hmm
believe that they play an important role in your creative process, and how?
Yeah, I'd say they really do. I think it's kind of interesting. I think a lot of that community it has kind of faded away recently, and I think a lot of that has to do with the way that Valve has changed the distribution of items. So we went from, single items, which is so. There's, I'll just kind of clarify that when the workshop first came out, that's when I did a lot of stuff. That's probably when I was most successful. Um, Now that then we transition from that to this kind of staggered release and tournament releases, and I think the tournament where there was kind of third party tournaments, it was a lot of like who not how good your stuff is. So if you knew if you knew the tournament organizers, you could get in with them and get your stuff distributed. And because I wasn't really interested in you know like, it wasn't my full time job, I didn't really put that much effort into doing that, and that kind of let me down a little bit. But even now, the fact that, sets don't come out very often, they come out really rarely. I think the greater workshop community has quietened down a lot. I know, a lot of artists have kind of gone on to do bigger and better things. And then every time a major is coming around, they'll come out of the woodwork and make one or two things and then go back to their other job. The Polycount Dota 2 forum is relatively dead these days. Not much goes on there at all. It's pretty much just the Skype group. I think there's a pretty good Russian Dota 2 workshop community going on Discord. But for the most part, the Skype chat is pretty much it. And yeah, the community has quietened down a lot in the last year or so.
Okay. So how do you value these relationships with your fellow workshop artists?
Yeah, there's only a couple of relationships with workshop artists that I really value. In terms of specific one-on-one relationship. In terms of the actual community itself, yeah, it's a kind of unique